Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Wings channel. I'm going to take a look real quick first at the astrological weather report for the month of August, and then the week of August 2nd through the 8th, and more of the week than the month really. And in fact, the month really doesn't have what is a lot of big acute astrology events as far as the longer term planets doing very much, except for one that's very strong actually, and we are of course in the middle of, and that is that Uranus and Saturn square. And when I say that it's strong, in the sense that Uranus is going to be going retrograde in August and joining all the other outer planets, and Chiron and Eris all retrograde at the same time. And the first thing I want to do is actually talk a little bit about that, which I usually do remind people of this every year when we get to this point in the year where all of the outer planets are pretty much retrograde at the same time. And since they're the outer planets, their retrograde phase is a lot longer than, let's say, a Mercury retrograde, which is usually about 3 weeks. They last months actually. So I know a lot of people will kind of get this panicky feeling or sense of all this retrograde can't be a good thing because Mercury retrograde and even Mars and Venus retrograde have taught us that those can be very challenging periods personally. But here's the thing: all of these outer planets are not personal planets. They're social or evolutionary planets and bodies. So their effect on our direct experience in life individually or subjectively is not nearly as acute as when Mercury, Venus, or Mars goes retrograde, which are the 3 personal planets. So it really is nowhere near the effect, is my point, on a personal level. So there shouldn't be this great individualistic fear that all these planets are going retrograde. Yet here they are, they're all going retrograde, and what it really means is what we'll see is the best way for me to say it is when we see things moving in forward directions in society, when we see things moving in a forward direction, say in an evolutionary sense, and that is across all kinds of levels, evolutionary sense, and on all kinds of levels in humans, including technology and intellect and science and things like that, and spiritual evolution. All those things are what we'll see is certain steps in a forward direction when the planets that are ruling certain parts of those things are moving forward, and we'll see new say ideas that have to do with whatever those planets are ruling. And then when they go retrograde for this long period of time, it's almost there's a step back, and that almost the consequences or the effects of those steps forward now kind of congeal or solidify so that they're seen more clearly, and then we have to deal with what those consequences are. Some of them may be positive, some of them may be negative. Now, one example I'm just going to give that to me fits this energy right now, because I talk about the Saturn Uranus square and the deterioration of structure quickly changing and other things replacing, energy of like a rebellious kind of energy of wanting to change a lot of the structure that, that Saturn represents, Uranus coming in and wanting to change it, and a lot of that stuff changing. So here's a really good example of that. So like earlier in the year, when the Saturn Uranus was first getting tight with its first exact square, we had, what was, being called now in the United States the January 6th insurrection, when a mob of protesters descended upon Congress and broke through barriers. And basically it was a mini rebellion. Very Saturn Uranus. Very, very Saturn Uranus, an attack on the structures of government and authority, that's Saturn, by an unruly mob of protesters, rebellious type people, that's Uranus. And then, the square was the energy that built them up, that they felt like they individually, those people felt like they had to act in that way. They're all responsible for their own actions, but like that was their response to that energy. So here we are now with the second hit, the retrograde hit of the Saturn-Uranus square just a couple weeks ago in July, and now Uranus is slowing down and is going to go retrograde this month. And so like that's very potent. Like I've said before, whenever a planet is actually stationing, either direct or retrograde, that's when its energy is most potent, in the sense of where we see real world events manifest that are very representative of the archetypal energy that those planets are representing and the aspect that they're having at the time. So in this case, what we're seeing now is the hearings on that very same insurrection. So here's the retrograde hit. Here's where people get to reflect and look back at what their actions were, and what the true consequences of those actions are to them each individually. And in this case, because we have a social and an evolutionary planet involved in this aspect, what does it mean to our society, and what does it mean to the continuing evolution of humanity on planet Earth? So it's a very interesting example of how that energy works, because it's like and so that's what we're going to have, is my point. Now we're going to have several months of all these outer planets being retrograde, at least until October anyway. In October, both Jupiter and Saturn, the two social planets, and Pluto, one of the evolutionary planets, will all go direct again and start forward motioning again for many months. So we're going to have a time period now where we'll really get to reflect on a lot of the things that happened whenever all those planets were direct last winter into the spring. All the changes that occurred, all the changes that maybe many people thought were positive, other people thought were negative, and now we get to see that maybe they weren't as positive as we thought or as negative as we thought, that there's this balance that is created in our dualistic planetary realm that we all live in. And that's one of the rules of the universe. And that's why when we have in astrology, we see these archetypes, this energy, none of it is positive or negative from the pure astrological standpoint. It's what people do with their free will choices within those contexts that are going to define their experience as whether positive or negative, and always a mix of both, really. So anyway, that's a really good example. So we're going to have Uranus this month pretty much stationing and being very stationary. So remember that Uranus is the planet of natural disasters and man-made disasters, things like that. So we can really expect an increase in those kind of things for the next month, like things that can be, sudden changes once again to structure, especially with the square to Saturn. Now, they are separating in that square, but they're going to stay within orb of that square most of this year and get back to an exact square later in the year. Now they're going to both be going retrograde, but Uranus moving slower than Saturn, so Saturn's kind of getting further and further away from the square exactness for a few months now. But then once it goes direct in October, it'll start heading right towards Uranus, so there'll be like two trains heading right towards one another, and that will be the third and final hit of Saturn and Uranus later in the year. So, okay, so like that's really the main event. So like really, that just expect, and and remember, Uranus also represents all that rebellious type of behavior, like that kind of energy on the individual. So once again, when it's stationing, certain people may act out of impulse in very rebellious, individualistic ways, and they may bond together, over certain ideals and viewpoints that they feel they really need to push within society. Now, the only other thing that I really want to mention for August, for a long-term thing for August, was Jupiter is semi-squaring Chiron, and that will be the second hit of that on August 17th. And that can kind of really actually, because Uranus going retrograde is August 19th, so the two of them are really tight together, and you can see how one can feed the other here, in the sense that Jupiter semi-square Chiron is a feeling of frustration that our ideals and values are not being met on a societal level. And there's a lot of that feeling going on right now in society, where different sides and different with different ideals and values are battling it out and feel very frustrated with one another, and then that's where the Chiron comes in. They both feeling hurt by the other side, and then the arrogance of Jupiter comes in, where each side is trying to takes a self-righteous position and tries to tell the other what to do, basically kind of gets to be like a preacher on a pulpit, which, that can fit, that analogy can fit any situation, religious or not. So that's going to be something that's going to, continue to frustrate a lot of people, and we can see where there's a lot of issues in society where that's, very, very good examples of that energy. And on a personal level, it's the same thing, just not feeling like your values are being met well, that within the constructs of society right now, and actually feeling injured or hurt by that. So this week, August 2nd through 8th, is an interesting week. It really has to do, once again, with my favorite subject matter, the Saturn-Uranus square, because it's going to be lit up all week very acutely by the Sun, Mercury, and the new moon. So we do have a new moon this week. Next weekend, new moon at 17 degrees Leo. And before I get into all that, let me just briefly finish up. Remember last week I had said, Venus was going to get in between the Saturn-Chiron sextile with the Yod this weekend, and that issues in our relationships that may trigger issues of unworthiness and the need to heal relationships and see how we get hurt, how others get hurt, maybe try to be supportive on that level, but kind of almost be sucked into events with people without really even being able to not, be sucked into it. Just literally the universe or the energy of the Yod just, unfolding events where we have to deal with certain relationships or things that can be, triggering, and where you can see those issues in others. Maybe they're coming up in you too. And so it's like, it can be a breakthrough in the sense of, when it leads us to this next place, which is on Tuesday when Venus trines Uranus, and the ability to maybe like come out of that and have new experiences, to like, maybe it's with new people, maybe with new groups, maybe new ideas with old people, new things being done, but really, find like a way out of the pain of those issues, and that use that opportunity that Chiron sextile Saturn represents to bring some stabilization and healing within our relationships that is supportive of one another and supportive of like the collective on a greater scale. And then like, and with the Venus trining the Uranus this week, like bringing in like personal stimulation, insight, and excitement, and maybe some new relationships, some of them possibly even romantic, maybe like some new experiences that are just like take your relationships with others to a new level really quickly, and then also like new forms of artistic creativity, and possibly even windfalls with some money, for some people even. But anyway, so that's kind of ending that, little thing that Mercury had done the weekend before, where it hit all those in the sun, it hit all those planets in that God, and just came out with a positive aspect with Uranus at the end of it all. So kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and some new ways of doing things. So this week, remember last week I ended with saying that Sunday is going to be a very interesting day because the Sun and Mercury were going to be conjunct in Leo, very subjective, very personalized, very into living the experience of our life on an individual level and really tasting it, really being who we are without much second thought for, how that affects other people or other things. Like Sun Mercury can get very, very subjective in its thinking, but also a really good time for starting new things, in Leo, for those new things, really broadcasting our talent, our uniqueness, and things like that. But the Saturn thing was going to bring in that taste of reality of like having to make some serious decisions in relation to what's going on, especially with other people or maybe with authorities, or things that are seemingly inhibiting us from being what we really want to be, who we truly want to be. So that really, so the Sun and Mercury are going to be traveling together, pretty close together all week. So whatever one does, the other is doing. So obviously they hit Saturn, so you know what all that means. They're hitting Uranus too, because of the Saturn-Uranus square. They are going to be in a fixed T-square all week with Saturn and Uranus. So we, those things. So what's going to come in this week is that strong part of the Uranus where we've, seen, some of these things that are holding us back, some of the decisions that we have to make, and from there can really project this kind of like rebellious, individualistic energy of Uranus to come out. And so like it really With Mercury, it's going to bring in a lot of energy to the mind, like a lot of ideas, a lot of insights, a lot of things that the mind is going to be quickly like going through, and there can be a lot of brilliance and ingenuity in there, especially on a personal level with Leo, with Mercury and the Sun in Leo, that like we really can see how our subjective experience can really like, you know, be part of like what's going on, the changes that are going on. So that can be really exciting, you know, but the thing that can happen with Uranus getting involved is it can kind of get like you know, almost irresponsible about like the way your reactions are to others, and kind of like being like, well, listen, you know, this is like so important to me that you're willing to be in a like kind of a disregarding energy in response to where others are at. It's like, and it's not something, I don't want to say it's not purposeful, because it actually can be, but it's not something that's necessarily malicious. It's more like something that you feel you need to do for yourself. Now, you know, the problem with that is that like most people are really, you know, stuck on the way things are, including the way you are in relation to them. So like, so when this new, you know, a lot of these new things are coming up, you're getting a lot of these new downloads, and then like reacting to them, that sun energy, wanting to like live and react that way in this individualistic, you know, strong-willed way, then, you know, it can shake other people up, you know, and it can end up being anywhere from like, oh, exciting change to like really highly disturbing, depending on how different individuals react to change, you know. And we're in a fixed T-square, so that's really showing like it's really pushing at people who are the most fixed or stubborn or entrenched in the way that structure is right now. They, you know, the people who have the hardest time letting go are gonna be the ones that find Uranus to be the most upsetting. Whereas people who are ready for some kind of change, even though Uranus with the square can bring a lot of like crisis and challenge and things like that, are still excited about the possibilities of where that change can lead them. So this is going to be a very interesting week of balancing that. Now, to top that all off, once again, just like every time any other planet has been getting involved with Saturn and Uranus lately, they're also getting involved in Chiron, not in the square, but Chiron is actually, you know, in the same degree zone as Saturn and Uranus. So like when one of them gets hit, the other one is too. So Chiron's actually going to be, it's the Sun and Mercury are going to be actually trining Chiron at the same time. And I think this has actually been really helpful to have these positive aspects to Chiron simultaneously to the Saturn-Uranus square. And it's really been people being able to take in the lessons and that energy and want to learn from them, and then are able to apply that stuff into their life directly in a much easier way than normal. And I think, you know, that could just be because the times are changing, and you have to, you know, when we're all collectively in it together, you have to go with it. So like, you know, so like maybe, you know, on an individual level, you know, there is like much healing lessons and new lessons and wisdom that we can take in from what we're learning now, and, you know, bring that into our life and find a new balance, a new part of our personality that can come out, a new way to shine, a new way to, you know, help others, things like that. So really interesting. So this is going to be, you know, pretty much going on all week. And to top it all off, then we get our new moon on the weekend at 17 degrees Leo. And what, of course, is it doing? It's also drawn right into this fixed T-square with Uranus and Saturn. In fact, it's very tight with the square to Saturn. To Uranus again. The Saturn is about 7 degrees off, so it's like the evening before. So it's almost the same story repeating. It's like maybe like the intensity of the emotional low ebb may occur in the dark of the moon, like right before this new moon comes in, and you can really be feeling the press and the restriction and the inhibition on an emotional level of the things going on in your life. And then the Saturn square is very close to the exact new moon time, so that's a lot tighter. So once again, it's the emotional reaction that's going to be strong on this. But there's the trine, the Chiron going on at the same time too. So like maybe being able to not take it so far in our emotional reactions and need to really be who we are individually, and to be able to follow our own path and to share the insights and experiences we have and get new experiences, new connections, new change, new growth in very quick ways from this new moon. So it's interesting too, whenever the new moon is in Cancer, Leo, which it is these 2 months of the summer. Last new moon was Cancer and this one's Leo. The ruler of the new moon is one of the 2 lights itself. So this is like really pure kind of energy in a certain way. It's like an energy of like of coming really from the pureness or essence of ourselves, and part of us that really is just being born and is just seeing the first light of day, like a new discovery within our own inner terrain that can come out and be a new part of our personality, a new part of our life journey, our life force, and help, bring some emotional security too. So, that new moon in Leo, on that level, really has that need to show who we are, what our uniqueness is, what our talent is, what our gift to the world is, and to not just sit with it. To and the square to Uranus may be the impetus that we need to get up off of it, or just out of the inside of us, and push it out into the world to show the world, what we can contribute to a time of, great change under this Saturn Uranus square, and a time of rapid change too. But it's really that new moon needs attention, in Leo. People need to be recognized for who they are. That comes right back into the self-worth type issues, that same stuff of Venus in Leo, and just really needing to be accepted for who we are on this very essential level. And then from there, able to say, oh, I feel safe enough to show you my gift and let it see the light of day. So to this new moon, it can be planted, and it can be very delicate in the beginning. But like, and there's, the battle for life, in the physical world, the Saturn part, the laws that we have to actually live by in order to exist. But here's this Uranus spark of wanting to show what we have to bring into that uniquely and individually, and add to the collective experience, add to the evolution and the growth and the change that's occurring all around us. So very interesting new moon, and so the sun is the ruler of it, basically. And so it's just a pure thing. There's no other planet, just like when the new moon was in Cancer, that's, really influencing it on a direct level by being ruler. And so it's really, really connected to Saturn and Uranus and Chiron again. And so this week is all about, once again, the Saturn-Uranus square of watching structure change quickly. This week is all about that really being personalized in us. And there may be outer events that, directly affect many of us that, can shake us up and force us to act, or there can be a lot of inner motivation to make changes occur. All right. This is the Astrological Wings channel, and I'm Matt Lawton. You can get in touch with me via email. Best way. It's mattHue823@gmail.com. If you like the blog, it's a free service. The best way to repay me is to please pass it on to somebody else. First, become a follower. On YouTube channel, you can become a follower if you like the video. No reason to do the video, so there's a lot of different podcasts that have picked it up. And I would imagine a lot of the podcasts you could become a follower on too. But I know if you get on your, whatever your favorite podcast is, Apple, whatever, Spotify, there's a lot of them. I think there's 15 or 20 that have it at this point. Just look up the Astrological Wings channel and you can find me there. And just hear the audio version. And, if there's a way to get notifications of when it comes on there, do the same thing. But on YouTube, you first have to have a YouTube account, and then become a follower, and then you have to turn your notifications on. Getting more followers all the time, so, I social media blitz people with reminders of the blog every week when I can. But if you don't want to miss it, I really recommend doing that. And if you'd like to send a donation, a monetary donation, my Venmo and my Zelle are the same account as my email, which is mattHue823@gmail.com. No amount is too small. I really appreciate some of the folks who have sent donations, small and large. Some have sent more than once. And then even more importantly, if you need a reading, I've been doing readings for almost 20 years professionally, so natal chart reading, your birth chart that is, or predictive reading, which is very similar to what I do each week here for the world, but I do it for you for a year, your astrological weather for the year. Relationship charts, children's charts, election charts if you need to know the best timing for something, horary charts if you have a question that you really just can't seemingly find the answer to, and it's very emotionally triggering. Relocations, if you're looking to move somewhere else or see where your planetary lines fall on the earth, where the strengths are, things like that. Fixed star readings for deeper soul purpose, or even specific questions, all that. And remember, with the new moon, look where 17 degrees is in your chart of Leo, and that will be the house where you're going to see that energy most focused. And where the new beginnings are. So like, just little questions, I'm available for too. Anyway, that just about wraps it up for this week. Next week we'll look at the second week of August. And use this time to, find a place where you can start that seed and, show where your talents shine. Until next week, it's Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel.